B the Cash. Gary B the Casual Comic Guy here, and I have a couple co-hosts joining me tonight. Directly below me, we have C Bizzle back for his second stint co-hosting. How you doing
Hey,
tonight,
guys.
sir?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm all right. And then we got the seasoned veteran next to him. We got Anachronic Comics Joe.
How you doing?
Good. And guys, before we move on to our guest, it is worth noting that Joe is only 3 subs away from 1K. If anyone watching can go sub up Anachronic Comics and get him over that 1K mark, we'd appreciate it. He deserves it. He's a hardworking dude who puts out great content.
You guys are so nice. You guys are so nice.
They even invite people like us on. I mean, really.
Right? And our guest of the hour, none other than Chuck Hensey, who had a great The 1011. So go check him out on there. Chuck, how you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing great. It's good to see everyone.
And he's the teacher, so he fights the good fight.
We fight, definitely.
So, Chuck, we're going to have you give the 2-minute version of who you are. Then we're going to go to the crowd and say hello. So, real quick, introduce yourself to the crowd here and a little bit about yourself, sir.
Sure. I'm Chuck Hensey, and I'm down in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I love comics. And as a collector, I've been collecting on and off for a very, very long time. And I got on YouTube not too long ago and was able to join the Gibbon gang over with Reggie at Reggie Collects. I do stuff some with Joe on Anachronic Comics and have been lucky enough to actually meet Joe in person and a bunch of the Gibbon gang.
So lucky.
And I know it was magical. And just blessed to be able to find a group of people who love comics as much as I do and geek out over comics just as much as I do. And, I even started my own channel, but there's not much on there because I teach and that takes a lot of time. But hopefully this summer we can get a couple more things up there. And it's just, it's so great meeting everybody and getting to know people. So
Nice. Well, let's say hi to our crowd, and then we're going to go to questions. We're going to get the dirty on him. He's in the hot seat, guys, so we're going to dig deep.
Is it burning yet, Chuck? Is it burning yet?
It's all good. No humidity. We're good.
Right. First in, as always, Las Cruces. Good evening, James. Nice to see you. Well, Bor, Brad, how are you, sir? Madam, Stephanie, great to see you. Thank you. All the nice people are here. Nice. Jean Malo. Good evening, Jean. How you doing, sir? And Cali Comics. Nice to see you, sir. Oh, 998, Joe. 2 away.
Whoa, we got one more.
Kenneth Bird, nice to see you, buddy. And C Bizzle subbed you up. See, but that's only because
Gary, if I make 1,000 during your show, you have to give something away.
we can do that. Just one more, Callie says. Psychedelic Comics. All right, guys. Joe is 1 sub away from 1K. If anyone's watching, please sub Joe up. And so good stuff. All right, so we're saying hi to people as they come in. We'll continue to do so. But Chuck, let's get into it now. Now, you are saying that you love comics. You've always loved comics. What was just a real basic starter, a lukewarm question to get you going? What was your intro to comics?
So my intro to comics were 2 things. One was curling up next to my dad in the morning when he was reading the newspaper and him opening up the newspaper to the comic section and handing it to me at 3 and me looking at it going, I can't read yet, but I was working on it, but I could follow the pictures. And, the pictures were telling all these great stories, whether it was the Peanuts guys I saw on the Christmas special or, you're trying to figure out what was going on with Gil Thorpe and all the sports people and all this other stuff. And, that started getting me interested. And then we had the holy trinity of PBS television, which my mother would let me watch, which was, of course, Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, and then the Electric Company. And the Electric Company, of course, had Spider-Man. And Spider-Man was just amazing and wonderful. And he wasn't on every episode, which really stunk, which means I had to watch it every day to see Spider-Man because, dang it, they didn't have Spider-Man every day. And blessed my parents who, were actually reading a lot of the advanced educational stuff. And, they all said, well, if your kid's interested in reading, you get them something to read. And that, yes, exactly, Callie. The Wall, the best villain ever, outside of Blowhard, of course. And so, they looked at each other, and my mother looked at my dad and said, well, where do we find comics? And he said, well, I know where to find comics. And so off we went to the newsstand, and he got me Spidey Super Stories 4, Spidey Super Stories 6, and anything that had Spider-Man on it. We came back, and I sat in the corner and didn't cause any trouble. So mother decided that was the greatest thing in the world.
Oh, he's quiet.
Exactly. He's quiet. He's in one place and the television's not on. So, so that's how I got started. And then bless them, they got me a subscription to Spidey Super Stories. Ooh. And so every month I get a new book in the mail. And again, I go off to the corner or whatever. By then my brother's born, so I'm not bothering the baby. I'm over in the corner reading the book. And as far as they were concerned, it was the greatest thing in the world. Until you flash forward about 10 years, and I've got 2 boxes of comics, and and they look at each other and go, this is going to pass, right? This is a phase. And it wasn't. So
that's good though. I mean, so you've stuck with it your entire life.
Yeah, I've had a couple of breaks. I broke around middle school because I was getting too cool for comics in middle school, right? Because moved up to 6th grade, and we're bad, moved to a different part of the campus, right? We weren't around the little kids anymore, even though most of us not had a growth spurt, so we were still, barely able to reach the top of the desk. And so I was too cool for comics then. And then I got back into it. My best friend turned out to be into comics, which was really good to find out. And so I stuck with it throughout high school. And I went to college. I said, okay, the old biblical saying, right? When I'm a child, I play with child's toys. Now that I'm a man, I put away child's toys. So, I went to college thinking that I was a man. Really, I was an 18-year-old let loose in New Orleans, which is not the smartest thing in the world to do, but that's for a different show. And, after about a year there, I was like, oh, you mean there's a comic store near campus? Well, I'll just go check it out. We're not going to buy anything. I'm just going to look, see what's there. And then I went back again and looked again. And then I looked again. And we can fill in the rest of the story. And I guess my parents decided it was better I was looking there than going down to the French Quarter and looking some of the things in the French Quarter, which, the family show, so we're not going to mention all those things. Anyways.
No, that's great, though. So with your friend that you found out collected comics as well, did you guys have a shared love of a certain hero that you guys connected over?
We did. So we both love Spider-Man, which is not a big surprise. And both of us loved the original Guardians of the Galaxy. And there was no good reason for that, at least for him. I'd gotten somebody given me a Marvel Presents at some point.
Exactly, Callie.
So that's who's tapped into my webcam every time I go on eBay. Okay. So we bonded over those 2 sets of heroes. And there was, at that time in Raleigh, there was really only one comic store. Was regular comic store, but we could walk to it from my house. And so what we did was, he'd come over to my house and we'd walk the almost 2 miles to Tails. And then we'd stop, we get our books for the month, and then we would, stop at Hardee's on the way back, and like very bad teenage boys who didn't know anything about preserving comics, we'd get our fries and our shake and read our comics together, and then walk back to my mother's house, and and we'd hang out like that. So that's what we would do. And it was amazing because his dad was into comics, which I didn't know. And so Rob had this love for the Green Lantern, Green Arrow team ups.
Nice.
Which I wasn't really crazy about, but he really loved them. And he was into X-Men before I was. And his parents would actually buy him back issues of X-Men. So somewhere in Baltimore, he's got a short box that has a raw X-Men 3 that his parents bought him. That's in probably, very good shape or whatnot. And he's had it for probably 40 years now. So
he doesn't know the rule, though. If you were collecting back then, you got to sell your old books to Joe for 2 cents.
I have that X-Men 3. I got that one for 2 cents.
Right.
Well, it's funny because we've talked about it, and at some point, he kind of joked. He said, "So you're going to try and buy my books from me?" I said, "No, those are your son's books, unless he does sons and daughters' books, unless they don't want them." I said, "Now they don't want them. Well, I'm happy to have a conversation then, but until then, those are for your kids."
Right.
So,
Yeah, but Chuck, you're probably gonna have to pay 4 cents or 5 cents for them at this point in time.
well, we've known each other since kindergarten, so I might be able to strike a friends and family deal with them.
Okay.
So,
Nice. That's a great. It's nice that. So you guys still talk comics to this day, huh?
occasionally, he's not doing all that stuff anymore. But it's interesting because his son's really into artwork, and he's talked about how his son's gone back and looked at some of those old books and used them to kind of develop his drawing style and everything. So that's really cool. And and then I made another friend in high school who was really, really into comics, like much more than the rest of us. And so he showed me where the other comic store in town was. And so, I went over there and set up a pull list. I learned what a pull list was and cons were, and yeah. And there we go. That's the one that had the first appearance of Grendel on the wall, so.
Oh, nice. So let's go back to a young Chuck Hensey real quick.
Uh-huh.
What was your top 5 cartoons growing up that just had you glued in front of the TV?
So we had Space Ghost.
Nice.
We had Johnny Quest.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
We had the Shazam ISIS Power Hour. Anybody remembers that?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Old dude with a kid in a van.
Except then they did the animated stuff with him. You had the King Comics Flash Gordon animated stuff from Filmation. That was so good. Hey Jerry, it's great to see you. And those were amazing, and they've actually held up over time too, which I'm really impressed with. And then there were Super Friends.
What's funny, Chuck? I was in my 20s and I was watching those shows, so I don't know what that says about me. But
Well, the funny thing is when my now wife moved down here, we watched Static on Saturday mornings together, and we watched Static Shock, and we watched the Theta series and the Tick and stuff like that in our 20s, and just absolutely loved them. So,
I was in middle school at that time, so.
Thank you.
I see. There's
the
always
gray feels much more enhanced now. So,
hey, watching some now, they don't hold up as well, but you still love them. Like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends was one of my favorites. You watch it now, it's like, whew, but I still love it.
I'm the same with Thundercats. I'll try to watch Thundercats now. It's like, why did I like this?
But you know what it is?
I still love Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. That's
Yeah, and I think Chuck,
Angelica Jones.
Yeah, Chuck, you'll agree. I mean, the thing is, if you really love comics, right?
Mhm.
And going back to those days, it's not like you had these big movies and things like that like you have today. So if you see something, whether it's animated, I go back to the George Reeves Superman, I mean, it didn't make any difference how good it was or how bad it was. It was there, and it was like superheroes or what have you, and it was movement, And
you
so
couldn't believe you had it.
Comic books. I mean, I think you agree with that, right? Isn't that kind of what really got you watching these things?
Exactly. And just like, we joke about the live action Shazam, where, the slightly skeezy mentor, driving around in the van and everything. I love that stuff. I mean, as a kid, that was just fantastic. Now, you get to Arc One and some of the other live action things Filmation did, and the less said about them, maybe the better. But that was amazing stuff. I look back at the Buck Rogers stuff that ran Gerard and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
The first season actually wasn't half bad. Now, again, the next season,
Gerard's ego got in the way that it started to suffer.
Well, that and the writer's strike that hit them, that caused them to do this huge tonal shift. And
a part of the behind the scenes on that is Gil Gerard was jealous that Aaron Gray was getting such good stories, and he thought he should be the focus. Right. And I'm sorry, Gil Gerard, but it's Aaron Gray all day with the tightest pants in space.
It's hard to argue, though. They also cut out Princess Ardala too, and you cut out Pamela Hensley, and you just like, why?
I still remember like Erin Gray when I was a kid. That was one of my first like kid crushes.
Mm-hmm.
She was amazing.
She was that, but that series, for a sci-fi show was pretty good, and that was something my dad would come in and look at with me because he had watched the original Buck Rogers serials when he was a kid, and he had listened to the radio stuff and whatnot. So for him, that was a lot of fun. Same thing with him. Oh, okay, Winnebago. So I'm sorry. Excuse me. Had the fancy glowy CB thing, intergalactic CB thing to get help.
Paul knows all that stuff,
I'm glad somebody does. But we watch. We look at the Flash Gordon stuff together, or the cheesy Lone Ranger things, and that took him back to his childhood, which gave us something that we could connect with, which was good when we got older, and I became an older teenager, and we didn't have much to connect with, so.
Well, and even though you could tell it was fake, there was a magic to it, right? It's like watching a Ray Harryhausen movie.
Yeah.
You buy into it, you're having fun, you absolutely love it, you're having the best time watching a Ray Harryhausen flick. It was the same thing with like the old Buster when you could see the stick or the fishing line or whatever on the model spaceship with the firecracker going. You didn't care, you loved it. It was
Buster Crab, my favorite.
Well, I remember Dad taking us to see the Flash Gordon movie, which I didn't love the first time I saw it, but then we bought the soundtrack to it, and I was a Queen fan, so I fell more in love with it. But I remember watching that movie, going, these are special effects, like literally. I said, man, Rob and I can get out in the backyard and get a couple tin cans and do this just as well, Maybe the BBC will hire us, but
I love that movie so much.
Oh, I love it too. I love it because it's so it's very genuine.
Yes, and it embraces its ham-fistedness in a great way.
It does.
Tenfold.
It does.
It's like, we know exactly what you are, and we're going to shove it down your throat, and you're going to like it.
we are unapologetically cheesy.
And it made it so much fun. The chewing the scenery. I mean, and Ming's daughter.
Yes. Well, the sad thing is when COVID hit, Sam Jones, Melanie Anderson, and Brian Blessed were all scheduled to come down to Raleigh for GalaxyCon that summer. And I had bought new copies or duplicates of the Flash Gordon movie comics. They came polybagged in the 3-bag, and I was going to get them all to sign it and send them all off to CBCS. And I didn't care what the grades were. I just wanted to be able to have those 3 signatures on those books. And of course, it didn't happen, and they're not coming back. So, but yeah.
Did you ever get the football card they put out of him?
No, I didn't. I got to find
it on eBay for like $5-10. So it says Flash Gordon and it has him on the back in the football. Oh, it's a fun little card. I wish I had it readily available. I'd show it to you. But so much fun. All right, so you had a love for superheroes. Obviously, you had a love for sci-fi. All right, so we talked Buck Rogers, which was great. But so you said you took a few breaks, but I want to talk about you starting to teach, and how did you implement your love of comics into teaching?
Well, the great thing about being a social studies history guy is you can pull a lot of this stuff in fairly effortlessly. And my undergraduate degree is actually in cultural studies. I'm actually my undergraduate degree is in American studies. So I went back to Appalachian State to get my teaching certificate. Boone Bakery, thank you very much. Great place up there. And what I found was that as I was doing my academic work for social studies education, that there was a lot of this visual literacy we could work on, a lot of these skills which were transferable. But if you showed it to kids in a comic, that resistance level isn't as high. So you could put, a couple of frames of a Spider-Man comic in front of them, say the infamous drug issues, right? To talk about 1970s culture or 1960s culture or drug culture. And it wasn't a lecture, and it was something that was kind of cool and kind of different, and a non-evasive way to do it, or if you're working on visual literacy for like an AP European class or something like that, you can do some of the Scott McCloud stuff with them and work on those skills without working on those skills, and
trick them by having fun.
Exactly. And in my psych class this year, I found an online link to a Powerpuff Girls comic, which really shows that it's one that talks about the girls having to write. It's their second appearance in comics, where they're having to write in what we did this weekend activity for their elementary school class. And each one of the girls brings a different perspective to the same group of memories. And so when we were talking about memories, we said, okay, here, you read this comic, talk to me about, the girls' personality types that we've talked about in class, about types of memories, and whatnot. And, it was a really neat activity to do that, was kind of out of left field, but yeah, it worked really well. And again, I get to bring my love of comics,
Right.
So Chuck, let me, because I taught high school for 9 years as well. And my master's is as a remedial reading teacher, right? And so I sneak in some comic-like stuff sometimes in those kind of classes and seminars. But I was in a private school, and it wasn't looked on as something, that I should do. So I couldn't really say, oh, here's the Powerpuff Girls, and that's a great teaching tool, bringing different perspective to the same memory. And I would bring some stuff in there now and then and throw some in there, especially if I was doing a one-on-one reading, you do some of that, that was okay. But it wasn't something that was really picked up that much in school back when I was doing it anyway. It seems to me like you don't have those type of restrictions and you can kind of bring in whatever you want to get the point across.
Well, I think two things have happened, Joe. There's been a real shift especially in the English pedagogy area, where they're much more accepting now of graphic novels and comics than they were when I started teaching my first full-time teaching job in '99, where, when I would bring in some of this stuff, I'd get the side eye from people and go, what are you doing?
Right.
And I thought, my test scores are fine, so why do you care? and then generally end up over the discussions, but now we're to the point where Persepolis is pretty much the Persepolis graphic novel is SOP in most 10th grade classrooms right now, where, mouse is something that I can pull segments, where if I go to AP Central, they'll recommend that for AP European history, that you use sections of mouse to teach about the Holocaust. Wow. So the environment's a very, very different right now. Yeah, it has. And in fact, I gave a presentation at the International Media Literacy Conference last summer about using comic strips in the classroom, specifically teaching about United States history and how you would incorporate that. And it was amazing listening to, especially a lot of the international people talk about how they do some similar things with their work also.
So just one thing to make sure so people understand, the mouse that Chuck is talking about is MAUS.
Right.
Not the two copies of mouse that Chuck gave to me as an AOK, because that's very different. That's MOUSC, and it's a little bit different.
Well, just a little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit.
Well, and there's like such good stuff out there and some of the foreign stuff is so good. Like I got recommended by Iggy Mort Cinder, and that's just an amazing collection of literature in there. Go ahead.
And it was great that you got that knowledge of it, because most people don't, where I threw in some asterisks and obelisk in a world history class one year. And again, and the jokes just went over. I was also teaching freshmen, so that's part of it. But the jokes just went completely over their heads, and
didn't land, huh?
No, not even the names didn't land. And I was like, obelisk, big giant item, asterisk, little. Okay, yeah, let's just go to the next slide. All right, let's keep going.
Moving on.
I have to explain the joke. It's already dead, so we're just going to keep right on going. Here we go.
Right. But when you're much older, you're going to laugh and remember me and go, oh, yeah.
Yeah, are they going to go, wow, they let those crazy people teach, man? The North Carolina must have been desperate that year.
Oh goodness! Now I want to talk about what you like besides the stories and comics. We'll get to your favorite artists, favorite storylines, but I'm going to bring this up too because I always think about it, especially with Jerry the Jitterbug and Joe here, is the history that the snapshot of history that comics provide, right? Not only with the ads, but with some of the language in the comics, some of the way the stories are presented. I mean, if reading comics from different eras is really a really good snapshot. Sometimes of the clothing style, sometimes of some language that's rather coarse, or some ideas that are rather coarse, or just cool things like you'll shoot your eye out with that Daisy BB gun that you can't have an ad for now. You know, so
Don't laugh. Don't
yeah,
laugh.
right. I'm not picking on your glass eye, Joe. And but how do you how does your love of comics correlate with history with comics?
Well, I think, when I was in college doing the cultural studies stuff, I got to incorporate comics in one of my last big papers I had to write because it was the same time as the death of Superman. And so I was doing a visual images in American culture class, and Superman had just died, and we were in the mourning period, and none of us knew how the story was going to end, but they'd already advertised who the 4 new Supermen were. And so I used that to, write some big fancy paper that professor actually liked for a change, and, and do that. But in researching that, I got to look at a lot of the history of the comics, especially Superman, and how his stories and how he really reflected, the attitudes of people on America, whether it's Americans' attitudes on America or foreigners, other people's attitudes on America. And I always find it funny, by the way, that some of my favorite Superman stories are written by non-Americans. That, Alan Moore, whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow.
Yeah, great story.
That, my buddy who was all into the Green Arrow stuff, his dad brought him that book when we were at scout camp together. And of course, we held next to each other in the fire, we're reading. We get to the end, and there's Superman, holding the statue, crying because, Supergirl is, the Supergirl from the past who came from the future, which makes sense to all of us here because we're all comics people. But anyone else that sense would make no sense to. But he's seen her and he's crying because he knows where her future is. And, they sort of gave him the Lifetime Achievement Award, which of course we know at the Oscars, that means you're going to die in like 5 minutes. And, and then we never got the second half of the story. And Rob and I were sitting there going, what comes next? We don't know what's next.
Don't give away the ending though.
No. But that's an Alan Moore story, or you talk about Superman Annual 11, right? Or you talk about Grant Morrison doing, Superman, and they
Ryan
just
Boland too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and they get him, I think, so much better for some reason than a lot of the American writers get him. They really get what his essence is, which I've just always found to be fascinating.
And that's hard to do. But I think part of it is, and that many of those writers were given more of a leeway. I mean, some of them, like Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow was basically the transition, from, kind of like the end of the Silver Age Superman or whatever way you want to look at it. Yeah. So they gave him a lot. They gave Alan Moore a lot of carte blanche to do that type of stuff. And I think that that's great. And it allows you to get out of that kind of, what's canon type of thing, and to use what you want to make the story come out the way you want. And I think that's a lot of what's missing. And that's one of the reasons why, like, at least DC keeps on rebooting, like New 50. They try to start up again because they want more people to read this stuff. But what they're missing is that you can have really great stories, and do it in a way that will bring the readers in and engage the readers. But they don't seem to understand that.
Joe, you're being much nicer to DC than I am. I think DC keeps rebooting because they don't have any new ideas, and they feel they've got to go back to the beginning about every 6-7 years. Because
but that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they're not allowing the writers to do what they may want to do because they've got this structure that you've got to follow, and they don't know how to get out of it. They have 80 years of structure that they can't get out of, and Marvel doesn't seem to care about that. They just go along and they make changes on the stuff.
I don't. DC frustrates me. I have not bought a regular DC title since I was getting Tom King's Batman. And that was more Tom King than it was anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I've gotten a regular DC title since the last Rebirth, because I just couldn't figure out. I didn't know who. It felt like to me they didn't know who their characters were, and if they don't know who their characters are, I can't figure it out. I don't have that kind of time. If you want me to figure out who your characters are and I've got to invest time in it, I need to get paid as opposed to buying your books. And I remember I was reading like Blue Beetle and a couple of other things, and all of a sudden you had this Rebirth that just sort of came out of nowhere, and it was like, well, okay, so we're ignoring all the 52 stuff we did now for reasons, and I'm not saying 52 was great, but it was there, right? But it was new, it was there.
It's talked of pretty fondly though.
Yeah,
I love the new 52.
Which one did you like best, C Bizzle? Which one do you like best?
Between New 52 and Rebirth?
But in the New 52s, which one did you like best?
Red Lanterns. Batman, of course, because Scott Snyder. Aquaman, because Jeff Johns. I am upset that he left the book after a while. The person that took over for him, I can't remember the name, but they didn't keep up with it. I'm not going to mention Teen Titans because it was horrible. Justice League, just to name a few.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved, as an old Aquaman fan, I love the Aquaman run. I thought it was great.
Yes.
Was that the one where he had the hook hand?
No.
Okay,
no,
I hate hook hand Aquaman.
Yeah, but and Peter David's writing was worth reading that for. But yeah, I didn't like the hook. So, but yeah, I like the Mr. Terrific series, but I like Mr. Terrific, so go figure. I thought the OMAC series was fun. I thought a couple of Justice League ones were fun too, but then all of a sudden, they just stopped, and you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm done. And,
was it like Convergence, and then it went on to Rebirth? I think.
I can't remember. I'll take your word on that. I said, at that point, I said, I've got other things I can spend my money on. So,
and you see, with me, Chuck, what I get tired of is revisiting the same tropes, right? Like we've had at Marvel, and we'll go to Taylor Winder's point, because Taylor says some good stuff here and there.
We just did about Animal Man, so
how many times are they going to redo Spider-Man? Him and MJ are working fine. Oh, we need something to throw the title into a hizzy. Oh, I know. Let's break up Peter and MJ over something stupid, and stop breaking up Peter and MJ. People are tuning into that comic for that. That's part of that relationship is what appeals to people in that book.
Correct.
Just
agree 100%.
They've been together for so long at this point that if you talk to the average fan whose introduction to Spider-Man is in the 90s, with the 90s cartoon, well, it's him and MJ.
Right.
It's him and MJ, and which again, that's fine. I remember
she should be like the Highlander. There can be only one.
Well, I don't know about that, but look, one of the first Amazing Spider-Man books I got, it was 143 or 144, where the final, splash page was him opening up the door, going, "Gwen, you're alive," and I had no idea who the heck Gwen was, but my God, that was an amazing final splash page there,
right? And then she was a stinking clone.
Yeah, well,
too many
clones I can handle. It's when you get a whole army of them showing up, and I'm like, well, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
But but going back to MJ, there's a whole lot of us who, they got married. Okay, that's great, fine. You can still have down on your luck. Yeah, I agree with you on that one, Taylor. We're not. Yeah, that's you can still have a down on your luck, Peter Parker, but who still has a semi-functioning marriage.
Right.
He can still have
some successes too. You can't just
exactly. And it just this Spider-Man it disappoints me in so many ways.
Because Spider-Man works best when it's him and MJ taking on the world together.
Correct.
I'm a hopeless romantic, Chuck. So I was reading I I think it was Tinian's Batman, with Catwoman, and they were building towards the wedding. And when it didn't happen, I stopped buying Batman. And when the whole thing with MJ, when they went through the whole, magical saving Aunt May, and I kind of stuck around for a while, but when I got to this point now again, and they're just like down, and I never saw him till I just stopped after buying Spider-Man for like, I don't know, 15 years straight. I just stopped reading, and I kept on buying, and then I said to myself, I picked it up again when they started with number one and I said, "What the hell?" and just stopped. That was it. So I just stopped completely, and Justice League guy, when the Justice League all died, and they're not really dead, but whatever else, I said, "Oh, no more Justice League. I don't have to buy it anymore," and I stopped buying that too. So sometimes these people don't understand what they're doing is really hurting the core audience that are invested in some of these characters. Like I was invested in Batman, Spider-Man, Justice League, and I don't buy any of it anymore. I just
How
don't.
many times can you break them up, or just or put them through the same thing, right?
Right. Well, and Joe's got a great point there. I've got long runs of Amazing Spider-Man, and I'm like you. When they did the one more day thing, I think I pretty much stopped by that point anyways because of art reasons or stuff. But then I definitely stopped, and then I picked it up again a little bit later. But pretty much that was it. Justice League, same thing. I've got boxes and boxes of Justice League downstairs. Love Justice League. Again, I get to the point, I'm not going to bother. I'm not buying it. I've stopped buying Avengers off the rack, and Avengers is one of those books. I've got like 3 gaps where I stopped buying it. And one of those, of course, is the Rob Liefeld error.
You don't like 17 chest Captain America poking out?
Well, if he didn't have so many pockets, I might be able to forgive him, but he's got to store all of his steroids somewhere. You've got what was it? When they did the Bendis broke them up and killed off a whole bunch of people because he couldn't write a decent ending to the series. And then this most recent series where they introduced the Phoenix Force, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to keep up with this. And the art got incomprehensible. But when I stop buying Avengers, my LCS knows, and when I'm not buying Avengers, that's a sign that the series is pretty much done. It's reached a point of it being hard to follow, and and it sucks because I really like those characters. I want to read a good Justice League story. I haven't seen a good Justice League story in a long time.
Yeah.
New 52.
Yeah, and even then it gets up to the Forever Wars, and I start going, okay, I don't, right, I don't know about that, but but I enjoyed the Justice League International they did. I thought that was cool, and I'm really disappointed they shut the thing off at 13 issues, and then I enjoyed Justice League Dark, also, which was a lot of fun. But then they rebooted it, and it didn't make any sense, and I was like, okay, again.
See, I just want to see a buddy book with Etrigan and Zatanna together.
Hey, go ahead.
They did the same thing with Daredevil. They just ended it. They ended it with Chip Zdarsky, and then they redid it again with Chip Zdarsky for just 13 issues. And now a new number 1 is coming up in the next couple of months with Saladin Ahmed. So it's like only difference now. DC's just started doing this is legacy numbers.
Yeah.
So Marvel's been doing
such bullshit. I'm sorry. That's such bullshit. The legacy. And I just want to sell number 1s again. I mean, come on.
That's it.
Well, and what frustrates the legacy numbers is, given the most recent death in Amazing Spider-Man, all these people coming online going, well, it's okay they killed that character because their series has never run more than 30 issues. And I'm like, well, yeah, but the series hasn't run 30 issues because Marvel restarts everything after 3 years. They've restarted Spider-Man 5 times in that amount of time. Does that mean Spider-Man's not selling well? Well, no, of course not. So.
Well,
they do like 20 variant covers for number 1.
Oh yeah.
That's what it is.
And then Batman has a new limited series come out every week, literally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's frustrating. I remember when they started flooding the market with Batmans in the 90s. And and looking at my LCS owner going, who's going to buy all this stuff? And he said, well, somebody's buying them. I said, how many Batman stories can you tell? And apparently you can tell a lot of them.
And
yeah.
Oh, and to Joe's point earlier, that's part of what I think when they dilute the characters by putting them in 6, 7, 8 titles. That's why I don't collect Spider-Man anymore. I used to be a diehard Spidey collector. What got me out of Spidey was when they did the whole, the Peter Parker you've always read is a clone and Ben Riley is a real. I'm like, no, you just take away all that history and say it's garbage, and that pissed me off so much. I got out of that, but I think like right now as a collector, right, there's characters I love. Everyone knows I'm a big Dazzler fan. I would love to read X-Men with some Dazzler and stuff, right? But I'm not going to read 17 X titles to learn to see what one character is doing. I'm not going to read 17 Bat titles, 17 Spider titles. Just that's where you hurt the audience that's always been with the characters. You know, we're not going to sit there and accept you putting them in so many titles that it's too much. It's overkill. So you can get a couple other people in that it's their first time in a comic shop with a 3-issue miniseries that they can just grab real quick, but they'll never come back.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah,
And they did it with the Dazzler. Dazzler's in the X-Men title in the team book called Exterminators.
I read that. That was so good.
That was a very good book.
But that's also where you can start falling in love with these lesser known characters and set as a collecting goal trying to find all of their appearances. And I think one of the smartest things that Marvel did in the 80s and in the 90s was the Marvel Handbook of the Universe. Because when they put out the official Marvel Handbook, here you had an opportunity to pick the thing up, open it up, and find a character that, like American Eagle, never heard of him before, but he's got that whole YMCA vibe, so it's okay. And like, okay, this guy looks pretty cool. Well, he's got one big appearance in Marvel 2-in-1 annual, and then a bunch of cameo things. I can track those things now. I can do that.
Right.
And then it starts getting you, then you start finding things you never knew existed. The whole reason I got into black and white magazines is I was trying to find all the appearances of Marvel's Scarecrow that appeared in Dead of the Night 11 with that awesome Bernie Wrightson cover, if anyone's ever seen it. And I had seen him in a Marvel Spotlight and in a Marvel 2-in-1. And I was like, this character is amazing. I've got to find all the copies of it. And of course, this is 1990, so we don't have, the Internet Comic Database, which you can just go on and, tickle your fingers on the ivories and everything and find it. And so I went to my LCS owner. He said, well, I think he appeared in an issue of Monsters Unleashed. Great. So I go over to the, comics, look in the M's. There's no Monsters Unleashed. He's like, no, you idiot. The magazine's down at the bottom. I didn't know there were. Okay, sure. I'm a 22-year-old man. I don't know anything. All right. So, you go down there and you start flipping through the Monsters Unleashed and like, oh, that's got a pretty cover. I'll get that. It's only $1. I'll get that. And, and it said in number 10, get ready. In the next issue, we're going to have the Scarecrow. And of course, the series ended at 10. But by then I gotten hooked on, oh, wow, he's got these great covers, these great Marvel monsters and everything. I want to get all of those. And, you go through there and you find Marvel Preview and then all that stuff starts churning and your local comic store is very happy that they sold you those Marvel handbooks for virtually nothing. So, yeah.
So Chuck, do you still have a pull list? And if so, what's on it?
I do still have a pull list. It has Tom King's Danger Street series right now. Mm-hmm. It's got the IDW Star Trek stuff. What else is on there? Shazam is on there. I'm trying to think. We've got a couple of indie titles that are on there. The Deep Cuts is what it's called right now. I'll tell you, it's an image book. It's a jazz featuring jazz. It's had 2 issues so far. It's really, really good.
I've heard a few people recommend that book.
Yeah, it's really good. Again, somebody used to live in New Orleans. Their depiction of New Orleans was really, really spot on. I still have stuff like Archer and Armstrong and Shadow Man on there. Not that they're being produced anymore, but they're still, just sort of generically on there because I haven't bothered to take them off yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think I've got She-Hulk and Hellcat on there, and that's probably
pretty eclectic bunch of books.
Yeah.
Shadow Man. Not too many people know about Shadow Man.
Shadow Man, when it started coming out, I was in college in New Orleans, and it really hit the vibe right. And I love the artwork, and it felt great. And we had a writer who actually seemed like he had been to the city, unlike somebody at Marvel who will not be named, Howard Mackey, who put a basement in a house in New Orleans. And
doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I need something a little stronger in my cup than tea right now for that one. It's like, dude, could you not bother to do any research at all? I mean, okay, I've read your stuff. You're kind of a hack. I mean, no offense to the Ghost Rider fans in here. His first 20 issues of Ghost Rider are fine, but it's clear he had no idea what he was going to do after that. And I'm like, dude, there's no basement in New Orleans. What are you doing? I mean, come on, man. That's like, I don't know, like not putting a gondola in Venice or something. I mean, really, I can't, And of course, I'm living down there. This comes out, and you go to the LCS guy, and he's like, and he's cursing up a storm, going, God, he's shaking the thing with anger. I mean.
See, I can't think of being down there without eating some gator.
Ooh, yes.
Gator's so delicious if it's cooked right.
Yes, or
if it's very cooked right. It's nice and tender. It melts on your tongue. It's so good. If it's cooked wrong, it's chewy as hell and not very good. But
it's leather if you don't fix it right.
Oh man, when it's good though.
Never had gator.
If you get the chance, go for it.
Yeah.
And then if you're down there too, you can get the gator sausage, which is pretty good.
I'm closer now than from my hometown. Like I'm in Dallas right now, so.
Oh yeah, you're not that far away at all. So no. Yeah.
So let's go to something. Let's go to a happy place for you because we had you a little angry there for a minute. So we're gonna let you. Your favorite all-time storyline in comics, the one you could read over and over again forever.
Man, that is tough. I love the Swamp Thing Annual 2 with the DC cosmology and the laying out of all of the characters and Alan Moore's vision for what the 1980s mystical DC looked like is just so spot on. It is just fantastic. I would say the first couple of arcs in Fables are just magnificent on how they tie everything together and introduce that world, and bringing characters, give new spin on characters, like their spin on Goldilocks was just amazing. And how they tie in a lot of the foundational information about that world by showing it instead of just telling it to you.
Right.
Showing it to you and just setting up a world that you want to get immersed in and you want to find out who the adversary is and you want to see what other favorites of yours from childhood get brought in. And it's just incredible. I think there's a single panel of Fables. It's later on. It's in the 130s when Bigby is in sort of the afterlife or the pseudo afterlife. And he runs into one of his cubs who had to sacrifice himself to save one of his sisters. And the little cub comes up to him and he says, "Dad, I just want to ask you, did I do okay? Did I bring honor to the pack? Are you proud of me?" And that came out around the same time that my father had passed away. Oh. And, and that very much, all of us kind of wanting to turn to our parents as adults and going, okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, what level of a screw up am I? You know,
Mhm.
and did we do okay? Even though most of the time when we talk, that's not what I heard. What I heard, whether it's what you said or not, what I heard was you didn't do great. Did I really do okay? And that particular set of panels just really resonates with me, because that little boy who did exactly what he was taught by his dad to do the right thing and to be the hero, and he had to sacrifice himself to do it. So did I do good? And that is just something again I can see over and over again, all the time. So, and the last one I'm going to mention here is the Superman Annual 11 with the Black Lotus.
Oh
And
yeah.
Oh yeah.
The incredible characterization, nuanced characterization of Superman, and the combining of both of his worlds, and the adaptation that the Justice League animated series did of it,
Yeah.
was able to bring a lot. I thought brought some interesting nuance to it, especially when you saw him in his fantasy world, where you see Lana's body, but the voice is Lois. The voice actress was Lois, and where you had at one point where he's talking to his dad Jor-El, but then as he turns away, you get Pa Kent's voice, and that fact that that the way they were able to take that initial story, which is amazing,
Right.
and then bring a whole nother level to it when adapting it for the screen.
And
Did
I
Wayne
did.
McDuffie write
That
that
was
one?
what I saw, and it does pull. It is powerful.
Yeah, maybe it probably was Wayne McDuffie, because he made such he was so good with some of
It
these
was,
stories.
yeah.
I believe it was Dwayne
Making the
McDuffie.
little changes so that they would fit, on the small screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a good episode.
Good answers.
Well, that's just a great series too. I mean, that's the other thing. That's probably the best top to bottom. I mean, outside the Batman stuff, of course, which was astonishing, but I think it's the best Justice League I've ever seen. Was that run of Justice League Unlimited, where you could the characters felt like themselves, with the exception of Shazam, which did not. But I understand why they wrote him the way they did. But the rest of the characters felt like themselves.
Chuck, what's interesting, as again, being like an older guy and stuff like that, but one thing that I constantly do is Justice League Unlimited, the Batman, the original Batman, and original Superman. I just consistently watch them.
Yeah.
I go upstairs, and for a half an hour, I'm doing the Justice League in the second season. It was 2 seasons of them before they went to Unlimited. I just continually watch them because I just love them. I think they're just fantastic stories, and a lot. I wish that some of their movies were that good. And I did see The Flash today. That's all I'm going to say. But I wish that some of the movies that they've done before were as good, because just the thought, and McDuffie did a lot of the writing, though he did some of it. He was basically producing or editing it as well. But having a mind like that can run through these and do these things, even on the comic book side, I mean, just have the right people there that can take the stories and can make them come alive for the reader or for the watcher. Those are just 4 great series that I just never get tired watching.
Well, and even when they tweak characters, like they tweaked the Question to take him from this, Randy and asshat, to this conspiracy-minded guy, and of course, the voice casting for that role was just fabulous.
Andrea Romano, she was great.
Oh, exactly. But it fit the Question, even though it's not the way the Ditko wrote him or anything. It really fit well. Even if you read the Dennis, the Question series in the 80s, which I love, you could see the two of those kind of converge with each other some, and really mesh in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And, but I'll tell you though, Joe, did you watch Batman Brave and the Bold, the animated series?
I did.
That was a good series.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought they did a fantastic job there You know, some of the interpretations are not the ones I would have had.
The Gentleman Ghost episodes were good too.
They were. And I love Gentleman Ghost. I was impressed with those. I love their Aquaman. So different than any other Aquaman we see, but just wonderfully bombastic, over the top,
Yes.
fun.
You know, it's kind of interesting, Chuck. It hasn't been part of my cycle, but I'm going to throw it back in there because now you got me thinking about it again. And I remember I said I did enjoy it, but I can't remember a lot of the episodes, you know, that were there. So I'm going to put it as
I
back.
thought that was a good series, and I'm not
Yeah.
the biggest bad guy. You could pick any episode of The Brave and the Bold and have a good time with it.
True.
Though the one they did that honored the wacky races, the beginning of season 2, where they had the death race to nowhere, that was very much sort of a wacky races homage. I thought was just incredible, and I loved I loved their interpretation of the Joker, which was unique and interesting. You know, you could feel the Mark Hamill influence, but you could also feel some Cesar Romero influence in it. You know, and some Jack Nicholson, and it was a fun, menacing, given the tone of the show, but a fun Joker, which I really liked, as opposed to one who's just so chaotic and evil. You know, there's no fun there. So
right, they're just trying to make them as what they feel is threatening as possible, but what taking the bite out of the character.
So Chuck, what's your thoughts on like the '90s X-Men and Spider-Man animated?
I love the '90s X-Men. Yes. I mean, it was a lot of fun. You know, is it the greatest thing in the world? No, but it was a lot of fun. I like Spider-Man. I didn't stick with it because I wasn't a huge fan of the animation style. So I think I gave up on it in about season 3 or so. But it was fun. I thought they treated Peter Parker very well in there. Yes. And I thought they treated, they did a lot of the characters differently, but they really tapped into the vast library of Spider-Man characters. I mean, they had the spot on there, for God's sake. You know,
it was a good series for me. For me, it just seemed that Peter was always yelling, or I don't know, loud for some reason.
I just think that they made him an adult too.
Yeah.
Like everything doesn't have to be kid Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yes, and that was
the theme songs.
Yeah, and that spectacular Spider-Man thing, I think that came out was on MTV or somewhere. I don't remember where it was now. That didn't. He was too much. He was too teeny. He's teeny Spider-Man. I didn't want to see teeny Spider-Man.
I never saw that. Yeah.
And, a cliffhanger on that one that never got answered either when MJ disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, you guys could at least made like an hour cartoon movie and wrapped it up for us.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Instead, they flashed him forward in that weird
Spider-Man Unlimited.
Yeah, that weird flash. Yeah,
I still watched it.
Yeah, it's okay.
So most underrated. No, I'm sorry, not underrated. Most underserved character in DC and Marvel, in your opinion?
So DC. Underserved, I would say probably is Red Tornado. Who, I fell in love with as a kid, but they've got 3 storylines with him in JLA. He's made into a traitor because somebody hacked his machine.
Mm-hmm.
He falls apart. He gets put back together. And I think you could do a lot more with him. And I know Busiek did a miniseries with him in the 80s, which was pretty good, except it had old Carmen Infantino artwork, which, at that point, I think he was getting work because he was a friend of everybody's and they felt bad for him. But art, like when you see a Star Wars stuff at Marvel, you just kind of, cringe, I think, a little bit. But, I think Red Tornado is probably one who really deserves good love too, I think. Marvel, I love so many obscure Marvel characters. I was a big Marvel fan for so long. I'm gonna say the Valkyrie. Why she's gotten some more love of late it's felt to me very superficial. Now I thought Fearless Defenders was a lot of fun.
It was. I like it too.
But then again, you kind of feel that trope where it's like, okay, well, she's too independent, so we have to merge her with somebody again, and it's like, did you have to do that? There are other things you could have done with her, but she feels like to me it feels like for me, for a so-called big gun of Marvel, that she really hasn't gotten the respect that she deserves. And, a good ongoing series that would be a lot of fun. So,
well, there was a cool Valkyrie one-shot. And I have a couple copies of it here that I love to read. It's an odd little story, but it deals with death and stuff, and it's great.
It has a beautiful painted cover to it, doesn't it?
It's a red cover with her in the front. Yeah, it's a good read. Yeah. All right, so let's see. All right, so we've been going for an hour now. We'll go around. We'll do some closing questions, and Joe, we'll start with you. Do you have a closing question for Chuck?
Sure. So Chuck,
start thinking, C-Bizzle.
I got the question.
So Chuck, we talked about a lot of different eras here, but if you could pick one era of comics, which one would you say is your favorite with respect to overall stories, characters, that type of thing?
Bronze Age. Yes. I'm a Bronze Age kid. Give me a good Marvel team up. Give me, some old school Defenders. That is very much my jam. Though I tell you, they just really feel great to me. The Bronze and some of that early Copper stuff. There's so much energy in those books, and there's so much passion. And even going back and rereading a lot of the DC stuff, you can still feel that in the DC side too. So one of those great what ifs, what if the DC implosion had not taken place? Because you look at so many of those things that were being proposed for the DC explosion.
Starfire, the original.
Well, that's right. You got Starfire. You've got, they were talking about, I think, a big, an expansion of the Mr. Miracle stuff. You were looking at, Firestorm. I've got the first 5-issue series, which has a lot of great energy and stuff to it. And then, it goes away and it winds up in the back issues of Flash and whatnot. But all this stuff that, there's so much energy and push and creativity. And you've got, Bernie Wrightson doing horror for DC. You've got Plug doing horror for Marvel, which is just amazing.
Right.
You've got, Neil Adams, really starting to peak and, really flex his muscles in so many different areas. You've got a young Canadian by the name of John Byrne showing up at Charlton, starting to throw a few things together, and just so much great stuff. You see them taking chances in Amazing Spider-Man, and just really, really dynamic stuff. And we're not even talking about, Dave Cockrum and X-Men, but you can throw that in too. And it's such a fun time to collect, and you're starting to hear the voices of other people too, whether you're talking about, like Black Goliath, or you're talking about the Cat miniseries, or, Shayna the She-Devil. Yep. You're starting hearing voices from other areas that you wouldn't have heard of before. You got the Falcon coming in, Daredevil and Black Widow. And it's just really, really fun, and it's just great. And plus, I love the covers, and
the Bronze Age covers are the best. There's a whole story going on just on the covers.
Yes, I love the circular logos from Marvel. The circle logos that they had. I miss those.
The other thing I think that I remember seeing in the Bronze Age is you had some covers that actually took panels, from the books, which you don't see too much of that anymore.
Yeah,
no, unless it's a variant.
Yeah.
Now tell me if I did good on this one, because I had never read this by Dave Cockrum, so I got it. So I picked up the Futurians, And then the 3-issue series that came out from whatever independent comic this was that he had put out after.
Cool. That's not bad. But even when you look outside the big two, right? There's still a lot of really inventive stuff. You've got, Ditko's gone back over to Charlton, doing some great horror stuff there. You get a little bit later on in the Bronze Age, right? And you start getting more of the independent stuff coming out, and young Mike Grell starting again, doing Warlord with First Comics with the first issue special, and then eventually moving on to other things. And just there's so much energy in the magazines, and it's fun.
And I miss the magazines.
I do.
A different feel. It's so good.
Yeah.
All right, C Bizzle, you got a last question?
Yes. Okay. Before we do that, though, Anachronic Comics needs one more sub. Anybody that just came into the chat.
Wait. My wife hasn't subbed up to me yet. I'm going to go over to her and have a sub.
It's an NPR fundraiser right now.
So we're
all going to give you a free tote bag and mug if you're the last signer. So please do that. It's only one signage a month.
Bizzle, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Gary B, thank you so much.
Not a problem.
It'll happen. It'll be fun.
Yeah. So my question for you is this: what is your biggest regret in collecting? Be it a book you had an opportunity to get and didn't get, or a book you have sold that you wish you didn't sell. So what's your biggest regret in collecting?
So I've got two of those. I'm going to start with the one I sold first. So some of the first CGC books I ever bought were in 1998, where I guess someone had come here for a con and had left some books behind in the trunk of their car at the airport. And so the airport held an auction for just random stuff they had found. And so I went out there just out of curiosity, and I wound up buying two books that I didn't have any money. And I wish I had, because there were some other things there I wish I picked up too. But I picked up Phil Rizzuto one shot from Fawcett Comics. Joe, you probably remember who Phil Rizzuto was. So
yes, I have that one. I have that book.
Okay. So, and the other one was an All American Comics 24. First Dobie Dickens, whichever one. I don't remember the issue number now. And I just got it because it was a cool Golden Age book. And I'm a JSA fan. So, we had a great picture on the front there of Alan Scott hitting someone in the jaw. It was awesome. And I had to sell that book after my kids were born to help pay for some of the medical bills that we had to deal with, because of some issues they had. And it was a CGC 6.0. I've actually tracked the number of it over the years to see what it's sold for last. There is no way in hell I'm ever going to get that book.
It's gone, huh?
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, again, it's what it is. So that's one of my regrets. The other regret, quite honestly, and this has as much to do with the way I collect as anything else, is that I didn't really pursue a lot of the bigger Bronze Age keys in the 90s and the early aughts because they were outside of my financial means. And, they were just always, so I don't have a Hulk 181. I don't have a Hulk 180 or 182. I don't have a giant size X-Men 1, because they were always just, a standard deviation or two just above what I could afford. Or convince my girlfriend / wife that I could afford, which is always a good negotiation to have. And of course today I definitely can't afford them, and which is not the end of the world. I've read reprints, I've read all the stories. So it's not like I don't have them,
right?
But I kind of wish I had gotten them.
Collector in you.
Yeah, the collector, and I mean, and last year I traded some of my duplicates and stuff to get a Heroes for Hire 1, So, I'm trying to work on that, but but I'd really like to have an Iron Man 55. I would really like to have one of those because I'm a legit fan of, Drax the Destroyer, and it would just be cool to have But on the other hand, I'm busy picking up lots of stuff, Golden Age stuff or, painted Dell covers, which are much more affordable. And in some ways, they're a lot harder to find, where I can go on eBay right now and type in Iron Man 55 and I can find an Iron Man 55.
Right.
Now, can I find one I can afford that doesn't look like I ran over it in my car 6 times?
Sometimes it's a good enough book to get, though. That's my view on it.
Well, and Joe, as you know, I have some books that look like they got run over by my car 2 or 3 times. But, it's just one of those things where it would be nice to have them, but if I don't have them, I don't have them. That's okay. On the other hand, I just finished my run of Hot Wheels recently, which, doesn't sound that great but they've got Neil Adams covers and they've got Alex Toth covers. And,
wow.
The last 2 issues have these black or have almost all black on the cover. And so they're really hard to find in decent shape. And, that was a lot of fun. And I mean, I could have not bought those 5 books and maybe had enough money to get a lower grade Iron Man 55, but those Hot Wheels are pretty cool though. I mean,
right.
So yeah. That
is a cool thing. I didn't even know there was a Hot Wheels comic. So
well, they did there was an animated Hot Wheels show in the early it was 70 or 71, and so this is a tie-in with the show that was done. But
Defenders of the Earth.
Yeah, kind of like that. But but it's really fun to find those tie-ins because it's like, as someone who loves animation, I find out about all these things that I didn't know existed. Like the Hardy Boys animated series from 1970. Which people have said that if it come out a year earlier and hadn't been for those kids and their dog too, it would have been the big cultural zeitgeist as opposed to Scooby-Doo. Now
I love Scooby.
Yeah, well, I love Scooby too, and I will tell you, I've seen some of those Hardy Boys things on YouTube, and I'm not sure it was that good. But anyways,
the Hardy Boys books. So growing up, I read them like constantly.
That's right, and I remember seeing Sean Cassidy on TV going, so why are they spending more time with the younger brother than the older brother? And then someone explained to me Sean Cassidy. So, yeah, I mean, but you find you stumble across all that stuff, and you get this great synergy of things. So. That's almost more fun than having an X-Men 94. Of course, I've never done X-Men 94, so I can't actually vouch for that. But
Bobby Ghetto says the Hardy Boys needed a dog.
Well, yeah, but Bobby, it's interesting that series can boast having the first animated African American character on Saturday morning cartoons.
Oh, nice.
Where Chet Morrison on there was flipped because. They were in a band like everybody else in the 60s. So, so they had a band associated with the show, and the drummer was the actor who did the voice for Chet Morrison, was African American. He was the first one on Saturday morning TV. I think he predates the young lady from Josie and the Pussycats. So,
okay.
Wow. That's a good bit of history there.
Random bit of trivia there. So, that's why they hire me as a history teacher. I can pull out weird random facts out of nowhere, because it's not good for anything else besides trivia night at the bar. So
that's all right. It's fun. I love random trivia. All right. So my final question for you.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a fun one, but I know you and you're going to think it. You get to be in a death scene in a comic. You're getting killed off. What comic are you getting killed in? Who's writing your death and who's drawing you?
Ooh, I think I'm going to have Jeff Johns writing it because he loves killing people and he does it so very well. As to who's drawing it, God, with a lot of the modern artists right now, I don't know who I'd want to draw. I think it would be neat if Jeff Smith drew it, to be honest. I bet that would be really interesting. And am I supposed to say who's killing me, or is that
what comic book?
Yeah, what comic are you getting killed?
Probably a Justice Society of some sort or another, some sort of Justice Society comic. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So,
on the planet or interstellar death?
Probably on the planet. hopefully they're not pulling out Peridagaton again. But there's so many great golden age villains you could pick from.
They could
just
just pick
somebody.
space.
Yeah, you just pick somebody. I mean, you got the Mist or a whole bunch of these guys. So
Yeah, have someone cool do it, right?
exactly. I'm gonna die, man. I don't want it to be because Stargirl didn't stop a truck from going into the intersection. I mean, come on now. They're a little better than that.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so we're gonna go around the horn here and see what everyone's got coming up. See, Bizzle, what's coming up for you, sir?
I got an unboxing that I'm shooting Saturday. I didn't get all my books out, but I did manage to pick up the new issue of Black Panther.
Oh, the design
Very nice.
Yeah, this is the 1 in 10, and my favorite cover is the Raza cover.
Beautiful.
And then I got a Scotty Young. I know some people don't like Scotty Young, but I love his covers. So and I'm doing my 200 sub announcement video soon. So people want to go in for the giveaway for that. The video is coming up soon.
Nice. And before we get to Joe, one more reminder. Joe is 1 sub away from 1K. If anyone out there that is watching is not subbed to Anachronic Comics, go. You could be that 1K sub.
1K.
1K.
I will give you a high five. That's my giveaway for that.
There you go. Right.
To be a virtual high five.
I'm going to check Joe right now. I want to see if he's still at 199 or if he actually at 1K. He's still at 999.
One more.
You got me too, Gary. That's more than I get for myself, so that's okay.
Right? That's all right. Yourself counts.
Yes.
All right. So, Joe, what's coming up for you, sir?
Okay, so you may recall I had that video on the Merry Marvel Marching Society where I took out my Merry Marvel Marching Society button, ID card, and all that. And a good friend of mine, Mark Andrews, when I mentioned that I was actually in Two Gun Kid number 79 from January 1966, he actually AOK'd me a copy. So I've got a video coming up on it saying, like, what am I going to do with this? Because I like looking at myself, my name in there, right? But I also want to preserve it. So I've come up with some way of doing that, and that's going to be on next week, along with the next episode of the Comic Book Crowd on next week from tomorrow on Friday. And Gary will be on there as well. Chuck might be. I don't know. We'll have to see. It works out. So it's in reserve right now. But so that's going to be pretty cool. And the week following that, I've got a couple of things planned already. One is going to be an espresso mail call. We're rounding up some people. Chuck will definitely be on that one because Chuck always has cool things that he gets in the mail. And I'm also working on a couple of other things, including my next comics that my mom let me keep. It'll be ready in a few weeks. It's going to be Fantastic Four. Again, it's going to be in 2 parts. And the first part are going to be the ones that I bought for 2 cents. So.
Oh, wow.
And don't tell me you're going to give me double the money, guys. Got it?
Gore Vidal was your 1K sub.
Congratulations, Joe. Who was my 1K sub?
Right here. He's right here. Gore Vidal.
Oh, Gore Vidal. Hey, thank you.
Actually, you love Gore's channel. His is really good.
I'll check it out. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Well, we got a lot accomplished here tonight. Joe hit 1K.
We sure did, yeah.
Chuck
Thank you so much.
Gave us some great comic history. All right, so you're working on something new. So coming up for me this Saturday, we have the Cantonese Kid on a special of the 1011. And if you guys don't know Jeff, he's got some killer books. Things like Vampirella 1.
Wow.
Yeah. But then we have Who Dat next Tuesday on the 1011. And then Shop for Comics on In the Hot Seat.
Wow. That could be good.
Doing the shop verse. So got a fun lineup coming in the next week and a half. So
I can't wait.
a lot
That's
coming on.
great.
And Chuck, what's coming up for you? I have a feeling we may have heard of a couple of them already, but we'll let you say where you're going to be.
Yeah, I'm going to be hanging out with Joe some on Joe's channel, and that's going to be a lot of fun. I've got a video from an unboxing from a couple months ago. I'm going to get up. Those are some Golden Age books I got back from CGC.
Nice.
So so I'm excited to show those. I do have some pickups that are not going to be on Joe's show, but I do want to do a mention of them for myself. So I may do that as a live stream. We'll see, and kind of
Nice.
figure out my schedule now that I don't have class. So
All right, Chuck. Chuck is keeping all the good stuff for himself on his live stream.
no. I'm not even.
Now he sounds like a real YouTuber.
I give these guys, I say, come on, show, and he says, I'm going to keep my stuff
the problem,
here.
Joe, is that,
some of that like crappy stuff I got in the dollar bin.
Don't let Joe Bruno you. Bruno's his clone.
That's right. Joe, the thing is, there's only so much time on your show, and there are longer stories.
You don't have to explain. I'm just giving you a hard time.
That's all right. I'm used to it.
I appreciate anytime you come on. I really do. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, Chuck, because like we're hitting that hour 20-minute mark. I'm like, Joe needs to go to bed. We got to get out of this. Because I know, because if you watch Joe's shows, there's a time where Joe's like, look, I'm done.
Yeah.
It's an hour and 15 minutes, Gary. So I'm giving you an extra 6 or 7 minutes right now.
Well, I feel honored.
That's
That's
one more sub.
1K tonight.
That's 1K, right?
No, but Joe, congratulations on 1K. You've deserved it for a while, sir.
Thank you.
Chuck, thank you for being the guest, man. This was just such a fun episode, dude. It was so much fun hearing everything and your take on stuff, your history with comics, what you love, what you don't like. It was just a joy.
Thank you so much. I had a great time, man.
And my co-host Joe C. Bizzle, thank you guys for coming on and spending the time with us and helping.
I had a great time.
We had to warm Chuck up to get him talking, so you guys helped.
I'm just so shy. That's what it is.
Right? But that was a great, and of course, we can never forget the people who support us, the audience. Thank you guys for coming out. Great community conversation here tonight. So much fun, and we really appreciate you guys. And thank you guys for rallying behind us and getting Joe to 1K.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And Gary, you probably gotten about 20 subscribers for me over the last. So thank you so much.
Well, you had to get there, Joe. I had to do my part.
Oh, you did. Thank you.
But guys, thank you all. And as we like to end these things, we are just going to say, keep it casual.
Take care.
Take care.